The sun has come out. The rain and inclement weather has departed. And I am out and about on Saturday here in February 15th, 2025, taking a walk in Lake Forest, California, and wanted to present a bit of information concerning some other topics, some other historical topics that I had some interest in, given some of my own Southern Italian and Sicilian ancestry, things that I had learned during the past couple of years, wasn't aware of, and some of you may, or once again, be aware of some of these things already. But I'm planning to, or hoping to, maybe create videos and other things, looking to begin other projects in the future connected to these particular stories. But I just thought I would share them in a video right now. So I will just proceed right into it. That I had learned, and I haven't found a lot about this in doing research in the internet or in YouTube and looking it up. But that President Thomas Jefferson in 1805, during what was known as the Barbary Pirate Wars, the war against Tripoli in the Mediterranean, during that conflict, U.S. naval vessels had been anchored off of Catania, Sicily, I believe, the eastern half of Sicily, where some of my own ancestors had been, born and raised not too far from there, in the communities of Tre Castagni and Pedara, Sicily, near what is known as Mount Etna, which is a volcano in Sicily, and somewhat like the Mount Vesuvius in southern Italy near Naples. But anyway, so coming back to the storyline here is that Thomas Jefferson had an appreciation for not only French culture, which many people are aware of, and there's the film like Jefferson in Paris, French culture, art, philosophy, etc., political philosophy, but also Italian culture. And he had brought an Italian, don't think he was a winemaker, but someone to cultivate silk and silkworms and the production of silk, Filippo Mazzii, but he had been Tuscan, Northern Italian, and he had brought him to Monticello in Virginia. And I had known about that. I had learned about that years ago. I'm going to back up a little bit here to get a little bit off of this trail, but I wasn't aware of what I'm about to share, which up until about 2 or 2.5 years ago, which was very interesting, is that this Filippo Mazzii had been Northern Italian and Tuscan, but that Thomas Jefferson during the Barbary Pirate Wars had requested that a man, a Commodore, I think, whose surname was Hall, he requested that he hire a band of approximately 25 Sicilian musicians from near Catania, Sicily, to form the nucleus, or to become, or if not to form the nucleus, to at least become an integral part of the U.S. Marine Corps band in 1805. I mean, during the period of, during or possibly just after the Lewis and Clark expedition, which I actually have close cousins in my family tree who were part of as well, like Toussaint Charbonneau. But I won't delve into that right now. But so these band members were hired. The U.S. Navy paid for their equipment, and they were brought aboard, I forget the name of the vessel, but a U.S. naval vessel. They were present on the vessel during the bombardment of Tripoli in North Africa during the Barbary Pirate Wars, and then the ship sailed, of course, out of the Mediterranean and into the Atlantic and brought them to the United States, and they then formed, as I had said, to kind of make this video a little bit shorter and come more to the point, as I haven't done during the previous 2 videos, that they're brought to the United States, formed an integral part of this U.S. Marine Corps band, and then one of them became the gentleman named Venerando Pulizzi, I think is how his first and last name and surname are pronounced, became the band master, the leader of the U.S. Marine Corps band for 2 or 3 decades, possibly, I think. So, very interesting story. And I believe his son, he had, he married like a American woman probably of English descent, and their son, then I believe also he served in the U.S. military, and there was an interesting story about him. I think I had read that he had protected an African American man in maybe Charleston, South Carolina, during in the antebellum pre-Civil War years, and because he had done so, I can't recall all the details, so pardon me, but that he was demoted possibly by Jefferson Davis, who might have been the future president of the Confederacy, who was the Secretary of War, possibly, I think, during and I need to check on that, just immediately prior to the American Civil War. And so he he was demoted, but then he was later reinstated or given an appropriate rank again, fitting to to his abilities and so forth, by Abraham Lincoln during the American Civil War. And I found online that particular letter in which Lincoln did so. So it's pretty interesting story. And then also, to skip it, to move ahead a bit and to pick up the pace a little bit, the band master or band leader of the U.S. Marine Corps band during the American Civil War, during the presidency of Abraham Lincoln, was a man whose name was Francesco Maria Scala. And although he wasn't Sicilian, he was certainly not Northern Italian. He was a Neapolitan, a Southern Italian, and he had his band play, I believe, serenades on the lawn of the White House during the American Civil War. They played, I believe, when one of Abraham Lincoln's sons had passed away, Venerando Polizzi, and the U.S. Marine Corps band, this was what I'm about to share, was pretty amazing to learn as well, or even more so, that he came along accompanied President Lincoln to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and was present during the delivery of Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, and then also Abraham Lincoln had requested that he play the song, that he and his band perform the song Dixie on the lawn of the White House at the conclusion of the American Civil War, because Abraham Lincoln, President Lincoln considered it then to then once again be the property of the United States, that song, and he had an affinity, a fondness for the song, and so, and then following the war, he is Francesco Maria Scala is the U.S. Marine Corps band leader to have first, how should I say this? I mean, I think he was the first one to, I think it was during his tenure, he was the first U.S. Marine Corps band leader to have begun, have his band begin playing the what is today known as like the U.S. Marine Corps hymn, the U.S. Marine Corps anthem, from some of the lines of which are from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. And it was during his tenure that Marine Corps hymn began to be played, that was pretty amazing to learn that. And that was quite fascinating. And there was also an interesting moving along, going ahead here. There was a story, another one that I had never heard of. There was an opera singer who was, I believe, Roman, Italian, and Sicilian as well, and once again had connections to the eastern part of Sicily, just as the band that Thomas Jefferson had hired, where I have ancestors who are from the area of Catania and Pedara and Tricastani, although I haven't visited as of yet those communities in Sicily, but this particular opera singer who I'm about to tell you about, whose name was Adelina Patti, was Roman and Eastern Sicilian, and she came to the United States with her family during the late 1840s, I think, or very early 1850s, and she had performed at the White House for Abraham Lincoln during the American Civil War, and performed the song Home Sweet Home, which was very popular during the American Civil War. Backing up here a little bit because there's somebody coming on a bicycle. She performed the song Home Sweet Home, and that became a favorite song, and kind of a favorite song, and how would I say it? How would I, an emotion, Abraham Lincoln once again developed a particular fondness for that song, and I believe as the story goes, as I had read, that he and Mary Lincoln began crying during the performance of the song by Adelina Patti in the White House in 1862, I believe, and requested an encore of the song, I think. So that was I had not heard anything about any of these three stories before learning of them during the past 2 to 2.5 years. Was also, I did know a little bit, and this is interesting as well, I did know a little bit about, and some of you may know about this, amongst the history buffs, American Civil War aficionados, buffs, and American history buffs might already know, but I knew a little bit about this, but not as much as I'm about to share now, that just prior, or the decade and a half maybe before the American Civil War began, that New Orleans, Louisiana had the largest population of Sicilian Americans, like Southern Italian, Sicilian Americans, immigrants in the United States, even surpassing New York, which, would seem unlikely, but it was true, I guess, at that time. And there was a unit. During the American Civil War, there had been a regiment titled, whose designation was the 39th New York Volunteer Infantry. And they became known as the Garibaldi Guard because the regiment contained one company of Italians, and they were also companies of Polish, Hungarian, German, Spaniards, and others in that regiment. But there was a Southern Garibaldi themed regiment from New Orleans, and the historical artist Don Triani, who some of the history buffs out there might know about, he's created paintings of both the 39th New York Garibaldi Guard and the Southern Garibaldi Legion, I think it was the official name of it, from New Orleans. And so that was quite fascinating to learn as well. Yeah, that New Orleans had high population. It's the highest population of Sicilians in the United States, and actually it was also, I was reading that there was a lot of agricultural products such as lemons and so forth that were being imported from Sicily into New Orleans at that time. So it was pretty fascinating. Also, this connects to my family tree. I have 4 direct ancestors who took part in something known as the De Tonti expedition, quite far back in the year 1686, which was led by a man named, I believe it was Henry, Henry in the English language, but in the Italian language it might have been Enrico de Tonti. And the expedition went from New France in Montreal proceeded down the Mississippi River with the intent of searching for and finding the explorer La Salle, who had been lost and I believe his men had mutinied and murdered him, I think, because they had felt he had taken them kind of on a wild goose chase that their explorations were kind of futile, and so they mutinied and murdered him. But so the De Tonti expedition was sent to locate him, to find him, and I have I believe it was an 8 times great grandfather named Joseph Charbonneau. Also like an 8 times great grand uncle named Pierre Bisson, and then one other uncle, and then I believe like 2 or 3 other like maybe first cousins, a few times removed, several times removed, who were part of that expedition. And Enrico de Tonti, who led them, was from Naples, Italy, a Southern Italian. And they did not find La Salle, but they created what became known as the Arkansas Post, which is today a United States National Park Service administered site in the state of Arkansas, which I had the pleasure to visit very briefly in the year 2018, and I'm hoping to do so again. And he was so interesting. It was an interesting story for me, having Southern Italian and French Canadian ancestry. It was quite fascinating to learn that a Southern Italian Neapolitan and the French Canadians had established the Arkansas Post in Arkansas, which was the first European trading center and Christian European settlement in what is today the known as, of course, the lower Mississippi River Valley. So that was another very fascinating discovery. I had also read, and I will try to wrap it up now to bring this to a close. I had also read that there were, it might have simply just been two Sicilian missionaries who were serving at the French missions in upstate New York during the middle of the 1600s, when there was French influence there, Dutch and English. And by that point, the English had claimed, I believe, New Netherlands, which the English then turned into New York. But there were still some French Jesuit missions in New York State, and there were two Sicilian missionaries working there, serving in those missions. And I had also connected with that somewhat, but on the other end of the other side of the North American continent, there were Sicilian Jesuits, or one who was noteworthy, I believe, who was serving in a Jesuit mission in what is known as Baja California, the part of Mexico directly below the modern day U.S. state of California. And he was a Sicilian Jesuit who was pretty well known. I suppose I could mention, there is one last story. It's not about a Southern Italian, but there was a man whose name escapes me at the moment. I'm going to try to remember it. I apologize throughout this video that the sun is probably affecting, the glare is affecting the quality of the video. I apologize for that, but let me see here. What was his name? Oh boy. I believe his surname was Vigo, Vigo, and he was a Northern Italian, but he was working as a trader and trapper and so forth in what would be known today as the Midwestern part of the United States, and he assisted General George Rogers Clark against the British there during the American Revolution. And there is a second cousin 9 times removed in my family tree named Father whose title as a Roman Catholic priest, and he might have been a Jesuit missionary as well, was Father Jabot was his title, and Vigo had been captured by the British, and Father Jabot, my cousin, helped to get him released. So, and I also have 3 or 4 other fairly close, second cousins, a few times removed, who were French Canadian, who helped George Rogers Clark in his campaign there against the British. And I think at that time it was known as the Old Northwestern Territory, or the Kaskaskia in that area. So that's going to be about it for today. But I thought I would share these stories, these tales, this historical information, which I had thought were kind of fascinating stories, and to do so in better weather. So that's about it for today. So I hope you've enjoyed it, and have a pleasant weekend. I'll talk with you later. Bye.